All right, everybody, welcome back to Kado Games. We are here, the mics are hot, and we're going to be talking about sports cards. And I've got a fantastic person named Chris, aka Allset24. How are you doing today?
Good, man. How's everything going? How are you?
Man, life is good. I am ready for a new year of sports cards. Like, there's so many fun things to look into. But why don't you tell all of our listeners who you are and, what is your hobby of choice?
For sure, yeah. So my name's Chris. I go on all these platforms, Discord, Twitter, or X, or whatever you want to call it, eBay. Username here is Allset24. Grew up in New York, Long Island, New York specifically. Now live in New Jersey. Pretty much started my collecting from my brother. He got me into it in an early age, mainly sports cards. And also did some CCGs as well. That was kind of like my introduction to cards in general. And then from there took it to kind of take a little break, I feel like, as most people do, like in like high school and whatnot. And then found my way back in like 2009-ish, back when I was in college. Once again, just something I did with my brother again, and kind of never left since. So been involved in multiple aspects of cards, mostly sports cards, but also CCGs as well. And then, yeah, still here.
So what are some of the CCGs you were interested in?
Yeah, for sure. So growing up in the 90s, it was a lot of, Magic the Gathering, Star Wars.
Oh, yeah.
SWCCG was definitely very big in my family growing up. Still play that to this day. So we played that a ton. Then kind of the crossover between sports and CCGs with MLB Showdown.
Yeah.
Today, that was a fantastic game. Was a huge fan of that. What else did we play? The wrestling game, Raw Deal.
Oh, Raw, yeah.
Raw Deal was great. During COVID, picked that back up with me and some of my friends. Trying to think, what else did we really play? I think those were like the main game. Legends of the Five Rings. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yes, L5R. I remember that.
Yeah.
What was your clan?
Yeah, Lion.
Okay.
Big Lion player. Yeah. What about yourself?
I was Scorpion or Crane.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my brother was a Scorpion player. So
okay.
yeah, so now he lives in Michigan now, but whenever we see each other, which is a couple times a year, we still usually, try to find some times to play some of those old games as well.
Oh man, that is so cool. Okay, well then let's talk about your transition from CCGs and TCGs into sports cards.
Yeah, for sure. So that was actually where I started with sports. Sports is pretty much like my life, or I feel like, most kids are when they're growing up. And since I had an older brother and I looked up to him a ton, he was always showing me, his 89 Upper Deck Griffey rookie and those types of things. So naturally just fell in love with it. Just like the collecting side of things and whatnot. I'm a big Bills fan, so there was obviously a big game last night that they won, which was nice. So I really collected a lot of Bills and New York Mets as well, for the most part.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the hobby. So the term is used pretty intermittently for different things, but generally when you talk about the hobby, we're talking about just sports cards and collecting. Because conveniently, the difference between like a trading card game, you've got playability wrapped around a card, so that can alter the value of a card. So, Star Wars CCG is a great example. Certain decks, your Palpatine, Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, those are not only popular characters, but they're good in the game. So the value is really high. With sports cards, there is zero playability. It's purely collection. But there's also the popularity of a player. There's the stats of a player. So, for a lot of people listening, we generally have a large trading card game community, and we have a growing sports community. So can you talk a little bit about the difference from your perspective about, why you collect trading cards, collectible cards versus sports cards?
Yeah, for sure. So I think just to touch upon what you were speaking about earlier about like okay, sports cards, there's not really a playability to it, right? And like what holds the value there. A lot of it is going to be, people who either like the player or the team. And then a lot of the money, quote unquote, comes in too is there's a big speculation, right? Or a lot of times people are prospecting too, right? So like there's people that are in the hobby, for money, which is fine. I think that's the good part about the hobby is you could be so many different things in here. You could be a collector, you could be a flipper, you could be an investor, you could be all three, right? But I think those are the different areas, especially that are heavy into sports cards, right? A lot of people, I mean, now gambling and like fantasy and all that stuff is very popular. But before that, I think it started as like, oh, okay, I'm really obsessed with, baseball, basketball, football, whatever. I know that this person's going to be good. I think this person's going to become super popular. So I'm going to buy up a bunch of their cards, which I think are going to rise in value, right? So I think that's where like the prospector came in, right, or a way to almost make money off of their hobby or what they like to watch and are obsessed with at that time, because you couldn't really gamble or anything, right?
Right.
Now you kind of do that pretty regularly, which I think also attracts another group of folks as well. But yeah, I think like the almost the ability to create some kind of cash flow or money aspect from it is where a lot of people get drawn to it. But then you have like such a solid group of collectors who are just like, okay, I want to, collect every top set, or I really am obsessed with this player and I want to collect every one of their cards, or I want to, collect this person's autographs because I like them, or, Pokemon people who collect certain like alternate arts because they like the different designs and all that stuff, right? So everyone has like their own niche and their own thing that they like collecting, which is ultimately the foundation, I think, of where it all comes together.
Okay, very cool. So when you are working on your collection, like your personal stuff, not your business
Yeah.
stuff,
Mm-hmm.
what are you looking for? Like, what are the things you collect? And tell us a little bit about like, why, like the history of why you collect those cards, those teams, those players.
Yeah, for sure. So my quote unquote main personal collection, or PC, right, for in terms of that is this guy who played for the Bills called Stevie Johnson. He was a receiver for the Bills when I like really came back into the hobby in the mid 2000s. And to me personally, I started collecting him because I had a bunch of like personal experiences with him. He was kind of one of those guys, kind of like Kado, who really tried to engage with fans on social media when social media was still like at its infancy.
Mm-hmm.
So like I used to play like Words with Friends with him. I was in like fantasy baseball leagues with him, like, and he was like this rising star on the Bills, right? So it was like the coolest thing in the world to me. So because of that, like, and I was back into cards at this point. His like, he was like in his rookie year, first year, second year, that type of stuff. So I was just buying up his cards because I was like, this guy's awesome. He's down to earth. Like he is just like a normal person, but he's also, one of the best players on my favorite teams, right? And I'm a pretty avid Buffalo Bills fan, so that was like the coolest thing possible at the time for me. So since then, I kind of just made my collecting goal like I want to own every one of his cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
That includes, one-on-ones, everything. If he's on it, like I want to, try to one day get every single one of his cards, right? Just like one copy, not like, oh, okay, this one's, number 200. I need all 100. Like, I know that is, very much unrealistic. I know my goal is pretty much unrealistic with the, amount of one-on-ones and stuff that are out there. But I feel like for a majority of it, like it seems somewhat attainable. He's not like the most popular player in the world, so it doesn't cost me, millions of dollars to, buy his cards.
Yeah.
And then like with that too, like just finding the hobby on Twitter, like the community, is amazing. So like I found like trading card database from them. I'm not sure if you're familiar about trading card database.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So like that really helped me like bolster like my desire to collect every one of his cards, because before that I was just keeping like, a spreadsheet on my computer of everything that I had of his. But now I was able to see like, oh, okay, every time I collect one of his cards, I'll log in and trading card database. It'll show me the percentage I'm at for collecting all of his cards, which ones I'm still in need of, like that type of thing, which is just like amazing. um, so right now, currently at 42% of his total collection. So and ranked number one there. So pretty happy about that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my ultimate collecting goal. And then like with that too, I have other people who I collect, just pretty much people who meant a lot to me in terms of like sports figures or whatnot. So that's my football guy for the most part. Basketball was Jeremy Lin. Jeremy Lin was like a huge like role model and inspiration for me. I'm half Chinese, so and I'm a huge Knicks fan. So like when
Mm-hmm.
Lin he was going on, that was like also like the time of my life. So loved seeing that. So I do collect Jeremy Lin as well for basketball, and then baseball. My favorite player growing up was Ray Ordonez. Not a super popular guy in the Mets, but at the same time when I was growing up there, it was like captivating fans. Like he was amazing in the field, couldn't hit for anything, but just somebody who like I always like looked up to as well. So like that was who I collect now for baseball also. And the same thing too, like doesn't have like a ton of cards, not super expensive. Like it's pretty easy there. Um, yeah, so those are like my three main guys that I collect. Definitely Stevie Johnson is number one by far. But the other two are like, okay, if I see these cards or, if I have extra funds or whatnot, I'll definitely scoop up some of their stuff.
Okay.
A little bit more picky with them. But yeah, for the most part, like my collection overall is just things that like is more so players than teams. Teams get kind of crazy because it's just like, oh, well, this is a Buffalo Bill, this is a New York Met, and it's like I feel like it doesn't mean as much. But ultimately, like when I show my collection to somebody, I feel like I could show them a piece of me, right?
Mm,
And
okay.
it's more so like, hey, this is why I collect this person, right? Or like this is why I have this card in my collection, right? I'm not gonna sell this card because this one is cool because of XYZ, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely have like a box of like sentimental things or sentimental cards or something like that also. Besides just like my Stevie Johnson collection.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's pivot from the personal collection to the business side. So you've
Sure.
got an eBay account. Do you have any other locations where, you buy, sell, trade cards?
Mostly on eBay. And then like Twitter. I used to run stack sales on Twitter for a little bit. And then I'm also on like Discord and I was on blowout cards, like that type of stuff. But yeah, the main area I sell is definitely eBay.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. Like what got you into the business aspect of selling sports cards? Because it sounds like your personal collection has been really, really fruitful and a lot of fun. But then at some point you realized, hey, I can actually make money off of this. So like, what's the story on that?
Yeah, for sure. So pretty much trying to find funds to fund my personal collection, right? I guess that's like the ultimate goal for me. And yeah, definitely the any other income I could generate from it is also nice. So I am married, I have two kids as well. So any other extra income is always good. But yeah, it basically just started once again, definitely with emphasis for my brother is so a lot of these guys I mentioned for my personal collection, they're not expensive, right? So like when we go to card shows and stuff, I have to be digging through, the dime, quarter, 50 cent, dollar boxes, those type of things, right? Those value boxes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of times where my guys are. So when I'm in there and I'm digging and looking for, my personal collection guys, I would always be, coming across cards like, wait, this is worth more than $1. This is worth, this is a $6, $7, $10 card, whatever, right? Like I might as well pick this up and sell it online, and then whatever money I get, like I could just use that to keep funding my collection, right? So it really started in that because I was like, well, I'm kind of already digging through this stuff anyway. So if I find stuff that's worth more, I might as well pull it out and then resell it and use this money for the next card show while I look for more, of the cards I'm collecting. Right.
Right.
So definitely how it started. It's definitely evolved since then. Within the last like year and a half, 2 years, probably, I started kind of going the bulk route of, I wasn't able to get to as many shows. Like I said, I have two young kids. So weekends is kind of tough for me now. I can't just spend like all day at the card show like I'd like.
Mm-hmm.
So now for me, it's more about like buying like different bulk lots and then just processing those as quick as possible, and then just listing singles on eBay, and just trying to do that. And then whatever revenue I generate from that, once again, same thing, except now I just buy mostly my guys on eBay as well. Just trying to streamline the whole process a little bit more.
Okay. So talking about like going through value boxes at card
Yeah.
shows, when you started to realize, oh, hey, here's a card that's in a dollar box that's going for 6 or 7. Did you know that card was worth 6 or 7, or were you like going through your phone and checking for your cards, and it's all of a sudden like, oh, I happen to see this alongside my card? Like, what's the story on that?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like I think people have said it before too in the past. Like the more time you spend in like the value boxes, the more you learn, right? And when you're there, you could find something that's numbered or numbered low or whatever, and like that's easy stuff, right? Like you're gonna know, oh, hey, this is numbered to 25. This probably I could get more than 50 cents for this, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times too, I would just compare it to what I'm buying, right? Like, oh, okay, if this card was a Stevie Johnson card and it was, number to 100, like I would probably pay $5 for this, right? Like I'm sure there's a collector of this player that someone would do the same before, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of it's like that too. But also when you're digging through that stuff, some stuff just jumps out to you where you're like, seen a lot of, this mosaic product before, but I've never seen this variation. So like for $1, like I'll just take a risk on like buying this, and it might be, a case hit or something, Uh,
Oh.
so I think a lot of times too, like the more you're in the value boxes, like you'll see stuff that sticks out, and you'll also see stuff based upon like the players or the cards that you collect and whatnot too. So that's kind of how I started. Every now and again, I'll look something up. But for the most part, like if it's $1 or less, like I'll just take the chance on it if I think it's, could be worth more. Yeah. I mean, at the very
Yeah,
least,
you're not
you're usually
losing
able
out
to,
that much.
yeah, at the very least, you're usually able to sell it for, what you bought it for. So at that point.
Yeah. So let's talk about the like higher end stuff. So, you go to card shows. What are some of your are you buying bigger cards? Because I know some people specialize in like bulk buys, dollar or less. Like they do like the budget stuff for collections. And then some people do, more expensive cards. Like what's your range for your business?
For the most part, I'm like $5 and below. Like 95% of my business is that. The other 5% is probably, $20 to $100. Like I said, I have a family and stuff, so I don't try to put a lot of money into this. To me, it's all about like churning and burning, and volume. So if I'm able to get, huge lots for cheap, I'll just take that and then like just resell those as singles online. And then like if I'm buying like specific singles and whatnot, um, I'll be a little bit more targeted with what I want to pay on stuff.
Okay.
But for the most part, like 99% of my business is, or 90%, like I said earlier, is like $5 and under for sure.
Okay. So, something I want to know more about because I'm getting started in the sports cards business.
For sure.
I've got years of trading card game stuff, but sports cards I've always collected, but I've
Yeah.
never done the selling part. So I'm learning a lot just talking to, more experienced people like yourself. So tell me about the philosophy of why you're doing the $5 or less, because again, there's so many different stores that specialize in so many different things. And usually when you're on social media, the loudest group are the really expensive people who are talking about, they're flashing off their, rookie Michael Jordans, their rookie Kobe's, their rookie XYZ. It's like, these are hundred, if not $1,000 cards, which, not everyone can afford. And they project this illusion that if you're going into sports cards reselling or buying or going to card shows, you have to spend tons of money. And you and I know that's not true. But
Yeah.
the belief is based on watching these videos, oh man, if I don't have $1,000, and I don't have these slabbed cards and this, briefcase, so I look like Seto Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm some kind of weird scrub because I don't have all these things. I just have a binder and a backpack. So like, what started your business in the $5 or less? Because I find that fascinating since I think those are probably more like profitable, but they're not as like loud and popular, and like there's not a lot of people talking about that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So, one, I think the percentages are way higher, right? Like you
Oh
can
yeah.
find stuff all the time that you find for like a dime or even like a penny, right? Like if it's a bulk buy and you could sell it for, $3, $4, $5, right? Percentages there are crazy. Obviously, the dollar amount isn't, right? But if you're able to do volume in it, then it starts adding up.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I kind of started there was one, like my story about, I was in it. I'm a collector at heart, right? So I was already looking for my guys and I was kind of just picking it up while I was there. But it expanded too, just because like one, I know way more about that stuff, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
higher end stuff is almost a foreign language to me, right? Because it's not something I'm always around. But I also think it's way less volatile too, right? So if you have people spending big money and like they're kind of just gambling on like, hey, will this guy win this weekend? If he does,
Yeah.
2 or 3x. If it doesn't, it's gonna tank, like that type of thing. I think there's way more collectors at heart too that you're selling to. When you're selling those lower end cards, right? Because a lot of times you'll see too, like when you have a big enough eBay store and you start getting a certain amount of listings, a lot of like the multi-card purchases that people buy, like you could see the theme in their order, right? Like you'll have like, oh, hey, like
Yeah.
somebody just ordered 10 cards from 2010 Tops, and it's like, oh, this has to be a set collector, or this is probably a set collector because they're not all from the same team. They're not all guys from the same college or the same region. It's like 10 random cards, but from a specific set. It's like, oh, okay, this guy's trying to fill his set. Like that's awesome to me, right? Like
Yeah.
for sure, like, hey, this guy is a collector at heart, and like he's just buying, like 10 of these, $1.50 cards or 10 of these $3 cards, whatever. He just needs these for a set. So I think that's awesome. You'll see it all the time too with player collectors. Like I'll have people come into my store and buy, like 10 of like some random player, and you're like, wow, that's awesome. Because like to me, that's like, all right, that's that guy's Stevie Johnson, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've done that before plenty of times to eBay sellers, and they're probably like, why did this guy, just buy all these random receiver from the Bills,
Right.
So that type of thing. So there's like so many set collectors. You'll get team collectors, you'll get player collectors at that level, where I think a lot of times if you're just buying the hot person, I've heard people say it's like hot potato, right? It's like a lot of guys just sending the same card around until like, the music stops and that person's kind of caught holding the bag.
Yeah.
Also, when you go like that high too, I think, and it's a lot of like, oh, hey, like we all want, Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow or this guy, right? It's like a lot of that money is almost like false money. I think at the end of the day, like the true value of a card is how much you could sell it for to a collector, right? A lot of times, because that's not the end user, right? So like a lot of times these lower end cards, they're going to the end user. So it's like, hey, this is like a base card. This isn't necessarily worth 250, but the guy was willing to pay 250 because like this is his card that he needed, like he wants it, like whatever, right? Where I think if you're selling these like popular cards, everyone always kind of wants like a different discount off of it because they're just trying to leave room just so they could resell it too and make a couple bucks on top of that. And I think a lot of times too, like you're taking on so much more risk when you have these higher end collections or higher end cards, right? That you're trying to just flip. You might be in $200, $300 on one card. So now it's dependent on one person, where $200 or $300 for me, I could get, a couple thousand cards, and it kind of diversifies the risk out that way. So I think it's just way less risky, especially in terms of like your consumer base as well, right? So like if I have a $3,000 card, there's not that many people that are going to be willing to spend $3,000 on a baseball card or a football card or something like that, right? Like so,
Right.
ultimately your buyer pool is a lot smaller as well, where pretty much no matter the economic times, like somebody has $5 to spend on their hobby, right?
Right.
That's kind of the way I think of it as well.
That is, it's pretty brilliant. I like the way you think.
Thank you.
I mean, there's just so much to unpack there. So the first thing I want to kind of unpack is you're talking about the end user. So I love the way you see the difference between a collector is going to get what they want for their collection, and then the flipper, speculator, the money market people. That is, I mean, would you say that's a smaller subsection of the hobby community compared to the collector, or is it like 50-50? Like what do you see in your experience as like the percentages between like a true collector who's getting a card because they love it versus the YouTuber, eBay money flipper, the person who's trying to actually make a buck off of a card?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I think that, everyone trying to make money in the hobby is definitely growing because now it's way easier to sell cards and to transact and whatnot, right? Like all those different technologies coming out it's for like card, and now it automatically makes a listing, and you could do this in bulk even, you know what I mean? Like there's a million different sites. The community and the hobby is continuing to grow, so now people are always trying to enter in the hobby as well. So it's difficult to say exactly what the percentage is. The percentage is definitely lower in terms of collectors, I think, now. Or at least it seems that way. And that might also be because of like YouTube and social media. Everything's about like, look how much this is worth and look how much this sold for, right? There's not as much YouTube content or a podcast or whatnot where it's like, hey, let's highlight this person's collection, right? Just not. I think that's also too. It's not as sexy, right? Like, it's cooler to say like, hey, look at this little kid who flipped this card and made like 10K, right? Or made like a couple $1,000s at this card show this weekend. Like that's kind of cool. Like everyone's like, oh wow, like I would love to make money, flipping baseball cards, or like this kid made money and he's like 15. Like that type of stuff is cool, and it definitely gravitates more and pulls more people in. So I think it's tough to answer what percentages in the hobby. I know like the older collectors who are very grumpy, and they're kind of like, I don't like how big the hobby's gotten. There's all these people chasing this and that. Some of these cards shouldn't be worth this much, yada, yada, yada. And I get that and I understand it, right? But the same time, like you want the hobby to continue to grow, you're always going to need new people in it, right? So you got to get new, you got to get younger. So some of these things happen, but that's fine. But there's like millions of different things that you could collect, right? Like player, set, team. You could collect mascots. Like you could not collect anything at all. You could collect vintage. You could collect ultra modern. There's a place for everybody in the hobby, which is ultimately awesome and what makes it great as well too. So like it's very difficult to say. And then I think there's a huge portion of people, especially nowadays too, because selling is way easier now in terms of like how to get a card online to sell and like easier to ship and all this stuff. I definitely think that there's a growing portion of people in the hobby, sort of like me, who do everything of like, hey, I'm a diehard collector, but also since I know a lot about this, it's easy for me to monetize it in a way where I don't have to take, money from my family to fund this hobby, because obviously it get expensive, right? So I could kind of make the hobby work for itself, right? Or work for me. So that's ultimately what I try to do.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about eBay versus your own store. So I've done a lot of research and I've heard different arguments about, you should use eBay because there's bajillions of people around the world who can see your product. And then, hey, you should have, a Shopify store or whatever and sell your own cards. You don't have nearly as much eyes on your store, but you don't have to pay as many fees and taxes and things. What's your thought on that? Because obviously you have an eBay store. How successful has it been? What's been keeping you there, or have you diversified into different places to sell your cards between like do you sell cards locally at shows, or do you just ingest cards from shows and then output cards onto eBay?
Yeah, so mainly ingest. Well, I used to ingest a lot more cards from shows, but shows is, I love shows. Shows are so much fun. I've only set up as a dealer like 5 times probably, and it's like the blast. It's so much. It's not necessarily about the dollars. Like you just have so much fun being on the other side of the table. If you've always wanted to try it, I highly suggest it. It's so much fun. I would do it every weekend if I could, but unfortunately, I don't have time to get to shows really much anymore. So now I don't really do much of the show circuit, quote unquote, right? Even like locally. So now, I used to buy a ton at shows and flip online. That was kind of my bread and butter. But now it's mostly like buying online and selling on eBay. To get back to your question about having your own store and your own domain and all that, it's amazing. It's awesome. And it's really nice to have lower fees, right? Like a processing fee on Shopify, I think is like 3 to 4%. And then eBay, you're paying like 13%. And then you pay, a higher fee if you want to promote your listings and all that. I actually work in digital marketing. So I've always thought about just having my own store and all that stuff. And I'd be like, oh, I'd be able to, drive people there. I'd be able to figure out like different strategies and, use like my actual job to start this and grow it as a little bit more of a business. Ultimately, I've not done that, and I've never gone that route, mainly because a majority of sports cards buyers are on eBay, right?
Mm,
They're
yeah.
not necessarily going to go to, Joe Schmo's website and be like, oh, he has, some of these cards. And especially like a lot of what I do too, like there's already going to be a ton of it on eBay as well, right? So like they don't have to necessarily, like I don't have like all this just rare stuff. If I had all this rare stuff, I think I would be able to hold them on my own site, right? And then it would be like, oh, okay, if I want XYZ rare card, I have to go to, Chris's site to get, right? But instead they would just be like, all right, all this like cheap, $5 and under stuff, like I'll just get from a different seller on eBay. I don't have to go to Chris's site to do that.
Okay. Very fascinating. Something else I've noticed, I can't find a way to get cards under 99 cents. So are all of your baseline cards like 99 cents and then up?
Yes.
Okay.
The cheapest you could sell on eBay for is 99 cents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, anything you sell, if you buy it for a penny or a dime or a nickel, you're making really good profit margins off of that.
Yeah, theoretically. It's a little bit difficult though too, because you also have to account for fees and whatnot, right? So like I do have a couple listings up there for 99 cents. I have everything free shipping on my store, right, on eBay. But if I sell something for 99 cents, if I sell one single card on 99 cents on eBay, I actually lose money, right? So based off of just their final value fee, so 13%. And then every transaction on eBay, they take a 30-cent processing fee. And then if I'm shipping with tracking, that's another like 70 cents. So if someone comes in and they just take one card at 99 cents, I lose, I don't know, a quarter or so. But so that's obviously not like my business plan, right? Some of that stuff is just old stuff that's just been sitting there forever, right? And it's kind of there to almost like your loss leader, right? So like like a Costco, selling a rotisserie chicken for $3 or whatever it is, right? Like they're not making money on that, but when you go to Costco, you're not going there just for the rotisserie chicken. You're going to pick up, however many other things you need as well. So some of that real cheap stuff is just in there for that reason, right? Like I'm not going to throw it out, right? So like I might as well just list it 99 cents. Hey, maybe, a New York Yankee collector will come in and take 30 Yankee cards and, 3 of them might be 99-cent cards. And then in that case, I'm not losing money, right? That ultimately just adds to their order value.
Okay. Absolutely fascinating. Okay, so the loss leader thing makes sense. Because I see on your eBay website, you've sold 17,000 items, which that's very, very successful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, when you're, how do I word this? When you're going to shows, you're looking, well, I guess when you used to go to shows, because understandably you have a family and, there's a lot of things you have to deal with. And you're in those value boxes, you're looking for stuff for you. Then you find stuff you believe you can sell, which turns into an eBay store. Now you're buying bulk. Now you're doing a lot more stuff. What's the evolution? Like, tell us the story of, you started to realize, hey, I can make money off of this. And now, however many years in the future, you have a successful eBay store. You've sold 10,000 plus cards, and you're still doing it. And you're buying more bulk, and you're able to do this online, and you've refined it. So, like, what happened where you realized I'm going to actually make this a side hustle, like an actual business?
Yeah, for sure. So I started my eBay store probably like 4 or 5 years ago. It was like right before COVID. So, or maybe a little bit longer, I guess. I think it was like 2019. It was like right before COVID hit. I had an eBay store. Because before that, I was really selling like mostly on like forums, like blowout cards and whatnot. But at that time, like, and even still to this day, like a lot of the forums and sites, like they don't have much high traffic anymore, right? So I was always like, you know what? Like, why am I so scared of these eBay fees? Like, I'll just either, like eat the 13%, or maybe I can make a couple dollars extra on it, right? And like, if it sells quicker, who cares, right? So I started making an eBay store. started posting these listings online, and I was like, man, these kind of take forever, but like, who cares? Like, it's, these things start selling, right? Like pretty quickly. And I'm like, damn, okay, like I should have been doing this a while ago. Instead, I just like keep, making new threads on Blowout, and like, maybe have like one or two people respond every like week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, like I'm going to shows, I'm finding all these things, yada yada yada. I start watching a bunch of YouTube content for the most part, on like different bulk sellers and whatnot. And I was like, oh, there is people like kind of like me who don't sell, $1 million cards all the time, right? Like, oh, hey, this is cool for a dive in dollar boxes and make a couple bucks here and that's it, right? So I came across 1 Million Cubs project. His name's Bo. He does like a YouTube show every morning now and stuff, and he's like, like the gold standard when it comes to like low end bulk sellers. Like he's got, like 60,000 listings. He runs his own show, like all this crazy stuff. Right. And when I started following him a little bit and watching his show, I started realizing like he uses like a scanner, right? It's a feed scanner,
Yeah.
like a Fujitsu, but I forgot what they're called now, Rico or something, right?
Yeah, Rico.
And yeah. And basically, like he used like a software, and I was like, oh, this is great, right? And like he uses Card Dealer Pro, and he would basically just scan like thousands of cards, and like Card Dealer Pro would like pick up what it was, and he would list it directly to eBay. And he was like, I was like, oh man, so like there's like technology I could use to save time, and he's building like this huge store, and he's like at the time selling like mostly commons. I was like, this is crazy. Like, I'm gonna do something similar because I have like a huge back stock of like cards I found in dollar bins, that are like numbered or parallels or like good rookies and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, like on a good day I could list like 30,
Right.
now like this guy's over here, listing like thousands. I was like, I'm never gonna be able to compete with this guy, like this is crazy. So then I was like, you know what? Like I'm working from home at this time because of the pandemic, and I'm like, I have some downtime, like either in between calls or whatnot, where like I could just like scan like 100 of these, and then like throughout my work day, take 5 minutes here when I'm getting coffee, like create this listing or something, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing that, and I still to this day, I haven't bought in like the Rico or the Fujitsu. It's like $1,000.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not trying to spend this much money. You know what I mean? Like,
Do you have the Epson?
Yes. So I went the Epson route. So I found some other YouTuber who was like, I didn't want to spend money on the Fujitsu. Here's how I use the Epson, whatever. And I was like, perfect. It was like
that's what I got.
Yeah, it was a couple $100, right?
Yep.
$300 maybe. And I
Yep.
was like,
It was $300.
yeah, I was like, this is perfect. So I was like, I'll just use this, and if it breaks or if the images don't come out or whatever, like I'll return it, and then maybe I'll get the Fujitsu, whatever. Haven't had any issues. Still use it to this day, and that's when I really started taking off. I was at this point buying like I was going still to shows at this point, but even in bargain boxes, like all right, a good day to show, I was walking out with like 100, 200 cards. But now that I had the scanner, like I get that listed in like 2 hours or an hour.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm like, damn, like I can't wait all week to go to another show and try to get like a big haul. Like I need to get like volume at this point.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where I started making relationships with different people on Twitter, buying out different low end collections. Cause that's the other thing too about low end is like a lot of times people just want it out their house. Right. They're like, hey, like I rip a ton of products. I'll keep the hits, but like this low end stuff, like I don't want it. Like my wife needs me to get rid of this stuff. Like,
which is perfect for you.
Right, exactly. So like those are the people I was finding, and like I was getting good quality stuff, like numbered stuff, not of like stars and stuff, right? Good inserts, maybe some star inserts, that type of stuff, like nothing sexy. And it was just literally just putting in the work that people didn't want to do, right? So I just started building up my store that way. Now I just crossed 20,000 listings in my eBay store.
Wow.
So I got to that. I mean, I'm nowhere near some of the big guys. I'm very, very, very small fish in the pond here. Not even close to some of these big guys. Like that guy, 1 Million Cubs, still has like 60 to 100,000 listings or something. Another guy I was watching at the time. What was his name? His name's The Dollar Box on YouTube. and he's gone like full time. Like both these guys do it full time at this point, right? And I was like, that's like awesome. These guys just like sell cards, get to hang out with cards all day, right? And just like sell their eBay store. So I've just like fallen in love with it. Like I'm like obsessive with it now. Like I love everything about eBay. Obviously I don't love the fees and all that stuff, but like I love like selling cards or just like being at my house, watching TV, and all of a sudden, your phone like goes ding, 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 and like somebody buys like 3 or 4
someone
cards.
made the sale.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what an awesome feeling. And like, oh, this person is a collector. They bought, 4 of this random person, and it's like, that's cool. Person's going to like really love that, so then like my journey was mainly sports cards until like, I don't know, 2 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. One of my best friends is like big into TCGs, big into Pokemon and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, and he was looking to get rid of a lot of his bulk Pokemon. He's like, dude, I used to have a TCG Player store, but like this stuff is so cheap. Like on TCG Player, it's like 5 cents. Like I lose money because like I have to pay for shipping, And I'm like, how is that possible, And at this time, Card Dealer Pro, which I use, just like got like their software updated to like Pokemon and all that stuff, right? It was like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic. It's like you're able to scan and it recognizes it, right? But like previously, it never did. So I was like, you know what? Like, if you're looking to dump this stuff, like I'll just take it from you, and I'll just try. I'll see if there's a market for it, right? Like I know the main market for TCG is all TCG Player. So, but I was like, you know what? Like, if I send them up on eBay, maybe someone will buy it, right? Like maybe there's sports card dads that are like their kids are like, hey, I want Pokemon cards. Like they're only going to know to go to eBay, right? Like they're not going to have a TCG Player account or anything. So I was like, I'll just see, and it's so low risk, right? Like I bought a 5-row of Pokemon bulk for like $50, right? And that's the thing too, like Pokemon, like it's so cheap. Like you could get bulk boxes. Yeah, you're not gonna have any of the alt arts. Everything's gonna be like under $2 probably, or $2.50, but you pay like a penny a card on Pokemon, right? So it's like, and I sell commons of Pokemon all day for $1.50, so I don't make a ton of money. It's like 20 cents maybe a transaction if someone buys just one. But that's the thing too, is there's so many Pokemon collectors, not necessarily even the players, right? So like now that I have like built up, I think I have like 6,000 maybe Pokemon listings. Now that I crossed like 5,000, I realized like people were coming back and buying like sets, right? Like so they're trying to build like their master sets of whatever set, and then I would just get like someone would come in and take like 30 151 cards, right? And it's like, oh, this person's building the master set, and they just paid me 30 or $40 that like almost covered my entire buy already, right? And like, yeah, I'm only clearing probably after fees like 20 25 after shipping, but still like I had 3 or 4 of those like a week probably at the time. And it was like, oh, okay, great. Like this already covered everything I did. And yeah, sure, like everything else is pennies at the time, but I don't know, extra cash flow, extra money, extra opportunity, because I was mainly a sports card dealer, right, on eBay or sports card shop. So yeah, I was just be able to have both, which was nice.
Well, and you're a marketing and business person, so you understand the concept of it might not be a lot of money, because again, going back to that, current instant gratification of, I flipped this, Moonbreon for, thousands of dollars. Woo!
Right.
But the reality is like, okay, how much money did you spend to buy it? Or how much money did you spend to travel to an event? Your hotel, your flight, plus the card you bought, and then you sell it, and then how much profit do you actually get? And then, there's so much math behind that short or TikTok you just watched. But you're not only pulling people in on the Pokemon side. If you're pulling collectors for Pokemon, they probably either collect other things, including sports cards, or they might know someone who does and go, hey, I got these Pokemon cards from, Allset. I'm not interested in sports, but I know you are. You might want to check him out because he's got, 20,000 listings. Like, oh, okay, cool. And so again, you're bringing in 2 different groups of collectors, and most collectors collect more than one thing. It's not common for just a single outlet. Usually they're doing multiple things.
For sure.
because
Yeah,
that's how we're wired.
it's like a disease, right? It's like if you're a collector, like you can't help but like hoarding a bunch of different things. It's not necessarily usually just one thing. You're right.
Yeah. So have you noticed either side of your sales gone up after you introduced Pokemon? Like, maybe you've gotten more people to the shop, or maybe you sold more sports cards. Just, tell us the story of that, because Pokemon is just so hot right now. Like, this is the
Yeah,
time if you're a Pokemon, like,
yeah,
sell your Pokemon.
no, for sure. And I think too, like the last 3 months of the year, you could tell like that's kind of also when sports card sales seasonally usually dip too. But my store didn't really feel it as much because I was selling so much more Pokemon at that time than like baseball, basketball, football.
So it made
So it
up for it.
really helped. Yeah, it really helped offset like kind of the seasonality dip of sports cards, which was awesome. So that was great. I will tell you that there's like a way nicer difference between like sport Pokemon people than sports cards people. Uh,
Yes.
like the Pokemon people, like so I've been on like this big. I'm really trying to continue to grow my store, and a lot of that is like loyalty to my store, which is difficult because eBay. A lot of times you're not necessarily loyal to a store. You kind of just search and find what you need and check out, right?
Right,
Uh,
right.
but there definitely are a small handful of people who are very much loyal to like their eBay store sellers, which is cool. So I'm gonna kick the last like 4 or 5 months to try to continue to grow my store followers. I'm at like 407, I think, as of this morning.
Yeah.
But really continuing to try to grow that because that's where I kind of think like the bread and butter is. So now like I just like simple stuff. I'll send like business cards with every order. Every Pokemon order now I send Pokemon stickers to with also, and it was like super cheap to get. Like you could get like bulk Pokemon stickers online for like under 5 cents per, right?
Where
So
do
it's
you
like
get them from?
I get mine right now on eBay actually. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Like this is like a kind of like a more personal touch, and I can't do this necessarily with sports cards. Like I tried to
Mhm.
a little bit, but I'll get into that in a second. But I was like, like Pokemon, like people are just like happy, right? So they're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh, yeah.
like great. Like this guy sent me like, like a Pikachu sticker with like my card. Like this is awesome. And like you start to see that like in your feedback, and then all of a sudden like Pokemon people leave way more feedback than sports cards people do. First off, right? Which also just like helps your eBay algorithm as well too, which is
Yeah.
nice. So I was like, even if I'm not making money, like I want to make these people like remember me or at least just help me, right? So like a lot of these sales and stuff, like it'll help me like get a better feedback score. So it'll help boost my algorithm, my rank, everything, right? So like really like surprise and delight these people almost, right? And like my store follower group count like started growing like crazy these last like 3 or 4 months. I mean, I only have 407, but 3 or 4 months ago I had like barely 200, right? So like I
That's
almost
pretty
doubled
good.
in 3 months, and I think a majority of it is Pokemon people because I was sending them stickers, and like you could see that in the feedback and stuff, and like I would like message them all the time and stuff, and they were like, "Thank you so much, this is perfect. I follow your store. Like I see you just added like X, Y, and Z. Like I'll be back Friday when I get paid, and like they do, they come back.
Awesome. That's
Yeah."
great.
It's pretty cool. So I started doing that. I tried to do it. I was trying to figure out how a way I could do it with sports as well, but I couldn't figure out a way to do it unless I had like a ton of like every team or something. Because like if someone buys like a Magic Johnson or something from me, like they're not gonna want like a Larry Bird sticker. You know what I mean? Like there's so much
Oh, yeah.
between like teams and stuff. Where Pokemon is like, oh okay, like you bought like 10 different Pokemon, like I'll just toss like any sticker in and like you're gonna be happy.
They'll be happy. Yeah.
It's not like I could, give an Eagles fan a giant sticker randomly or
That would go poorly.
Yankees or Reds, you know what I mean?
You get a
So,
negative review. They sent me the sticker of the wrong team. What a
yeah,
loser.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, I just don't think there's the market for these people that would do that. Um, so I did it for like really briefly. I had like a bunch of like Kobe Bryant stickers that I got like randomly. And I was like, you know what? Like Kobe's kind of iconic enough where like most people like him at this point. So like if anyone ordered a basketball card, like I gave him a Kobe sticker, but I didn't see any traction with it or anything,
Okay.
which kind of makes sense. because it was like, oh, hey, like I just ordered this Brooklyn Nets card. I got this Kobe sticker. Like I don't necessarily like Kobe, like whatever, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Pokemon community is like so friendly and like thankful and like, you know, grateful, I guess. And I don't know, it's just like way more fun and like interactive than it is like, you know, sports cards people.
Well, let's talk about that. So I've actually been doing Pokemon all my life since base set.
Awesome.
So you know sports, I know Pokemon. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Pokemon generally is a combination of parents and kids,
Mhm.
or people who are collecting, or fans of the franchise who are just getting their favorite card. So it's not very different from sports cards actually. You've got people like you're saying, they'll get all of a set. So they're doing a master set of like Pokemon 151
Yep.
or, you know, the new Journey Together that's coming out later, or, you know, Prismatic Evolution, whatever. So they want to do a whole set, one of each card. Then there's the people who love that one Pokemon. They're Pikachu fans,
Yeah.
Moonbreon fan, whatever. So they're going to
Yeah.
try and get one of every variation of that card. And then there's the classic, you know, rule of cool, where people just like cool art, and if they see a card they like and it's at a price they like, they'll just get it because why not? They're gonna stick it
Right.
in a binder, or they're
Mhm.
gonna put it in a top loader and stick it on their wall with, you know, top loader stuff. So usually the Pokemon collector has very low interest in the monetary value of the card,
Mhm.
because they're not going to sell it. They're going to collect it and display it and show all their friends.
Right.
So if it's $1, if it's $20, if it's $100, they don't really care. They just have the card because they love it. Like I'm a Blastoise collector, and there are definitely some that are very expensive, but there's also a ton that are worthless. And so, you know, I'm trying to over time get as many as I possibly can, because that's my favorite Pokemon. But yeah, if you send me a sticker, that's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I love it. Whereas I want to kind of pick your brain on sports cards, because I've met a lot of really nice people, but they seem a lot firmer and a lot harsher. Mostly, I like, it seems like it's a lot of older folks and maybe some like middle-aged folks, but I don't see nearly as many parents and kids, or I'm just collecting this because it's fun and I enjoy it. Usually it's
Right.
like there's like a stipulation added to it. So I want to hear your side of the sports community.
No, I definitely agree. Well, first off, I have a follow up question to you being a Blastoise collector. Do you necessarily collect doubles and stuff, or you'll just only collect like one of each variation?
If I can get them at a good price, I don't mind. Currently, I have mostly one of a Blastoise. There's a couple I've either pulled, like, you know, from a set, or
Mhm.
you know, I'll buy it like from a person's collection. There happens to be multiple. And it's like, all right, this is going in a top loader, and then eventually I'm going to get them graded because I want them like sealed in for that longevity. Because I'm not going to sell them. I'm not going to flip my Blastoise cards.
Right. Right. That's awesome.
Um, but yeah,
Uh,
I collect comics, some comics, not a lot, but like I do the two for the comics. So one will go into a bag and board, never to be touched. The other one I'll read, and I don't care what happens to it because I can enjoy the comic, but I can also
very cool.
collect it.
Very
Um,
cool.
but for cards, no, usually it's just a one of, because I'm not going to play with it.
Yeah. 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 I hear you. Okay. Great. What was the question? Oh, sports cards people. Yeah, I think a lot of times too, like there's like a pompness about their collection, right? That they are, or they kind of just like assume that they're better than you.
Like an elitist kind
Yes,
of
elitist.
attitude.
Yes, for sure. In the sports card community, there definitely is, you know, a little bit of that stigma.
Okay.
Um, I mean, that being said, there's like millions of people who are like the nicest people you'll ever meet too
Sure.
in the card community. Like, you know, there's people that like I'll just send cards to because I'm like, hey, this person is like the diehard fan. Like, this needs to go in their collection. Like, there's no one else collects this player besides this person. Like, they need this card. You know.
Merry Christmas. Here you
And
go.
yeah. And I feel like I've reciprocated some of those too as well. And honestly, like the best part about it has been in the Twitter community, right? Like I know people have said it too before in the past, like the Instagram version of the hobby, the Facebook version, it's just like trolls and fighting and like people trying to rip each other off, this or that. Like the hobby community on Twitter, Like, I'm so happy I found it. Like, it is like the nicest people. It is
Yeah.
like the good part of the hobby. Like, during COVID, like there was a huge thing. They called them racks, right? Random act of kindness, and like people would just get together. It still happens all the time now, but definitely a little bit less than it did previously, where everyone would just like, like just send cards to people that they knew that they wanted for their collection. Like, and so you would just randomly like go to the mail and be like, oh wait, I didn't know. Like, I'm not expecting anything, and it'd be like, wow, look at this. Numbered Stevie Johnson I didn't have. Like, I can't believe someone sent this to me. And then like there'd be like a note with it with like all the people that contributed to it and like all this stuff. Like really, really cool, powerful, awesome stuff.
That's cool.
Yeah, so the Twitter community is amazing for that for sure. But no, I definitely think too, like there's a little bit more of a griminess, I feel like, when it comes to sports cards as well, because like the dealer buyer relationship sometimes is a little bit weird because it's like, are you trying to get one over on me? I'm trying to get one over on you. Like, is someone trying to be a snake for a couple extra bucks? Am I getting ripped off? Like that type of thing, which is, not always great. But I mean, it's the same thing though. Like, you'll find good people, you'll find bad people. Like, there's some amazing dealers, there's some grimy ones. It's just kind of, it is what it is.
I mean, it's the same in Pokemon. You've got the classic, people are trying to scam you. People are trying to take a $5 card and like squeeze out that extra $2 and sell it for $7. Right. It's like, dude, come on, man.
Right.
So yeah, I think that the Pokemon community compared to the sports card community is a lot more jovial, but yes, there are still good and bad apples in both communities. Something I want to know more about coming from my end of TCG experience. So you're selling your commons for $1.50, where if you go other places, they're not going for $1.50. Mm-hmm. How did you get to that number, and what do you think is making you so successful? Because this is very interesting coming from my end, because generally a common is not worth that. I don't know exactly what it's worth, but the fact that not only are you selling them for that, but it's working is absolutely fascinating. I'd love to hear where that came from. Like, all right, first of all, we know that like we can establish some ground rules. So you can't sell a card for lower than 99 cents.
Yep.
Okay, understood.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But why the $1.50? And
so I mentioned previously, right? So if I sell something at 99 cents, I'm losing money after transaction fees and shipping, right?
Yeah.
So $1.50 is kind of like the low point in terms of like slightly above break even. Okay. Right. Also $1.50, I feel like people are, if they want the card, they're just gonna buy it because at the end of the day it's only $1.50, and that like includes shipping, right?
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Is all of your shipping free? Like 100%?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Always.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question about that when we're done. But yeah, please continue. Fascinating.
No, for sure. Yeah. So I mean, so that's pretty much like the bottom price I could give somebody where I'm not necessarily losing money. Right. So I'll make, I don't remember what the actual math is, but like usually between like 10 and 20 cents on a transaction of $1.50. Right.
You know what? That's still pretty good.
For commons and stuff, definitely in the TCG space, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that comes down to the platform too, right? So like on TCG Player, you're not getting that, right? Like TCG Player, you can, like, I see stuff that are listed for like a penny.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's what confused me. It's like, you can buy on TCG Player for like a penny or a nickel.
Right.
But then you have a good point. You lose out on the shipping because your shipping is like, 70, 90 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I kind of see where you're going here.
And also I think a lot of sellers too on TCG Player either have minimums or like they only do like $5 flat rate shipping, right? So it doesn't really give you that great of an opportunity just to buy like a single common or like 3 single commons on TCG Player, right? I feel like you could find it cheaper on eBay, no?
I see what you're saying. Okay, so on TCG Player, your minimum shipping right now is $1.27. That is the bottom of the barrel. So unless you spend above a certain threshold, so usually your bottom of the barrel shipping is $1.27. Okay. And then a lot of stores like myself, if you buy $5 or more, you get free shipping. You can control that variant, but most places are between $5 and $10 gives you free shipping. Plain white envelope, no tracking. You get a stamp and the piece of paper that says your address, and that's it. But I just realized I forgot you're doing free shipping because I'm doing 99-cent shipping on my store. So
Gotcha.
technically, you're about the same price point because
Yeah, it's very similar.
you're going to spend, a nickel on a card, then you're going to spend $1.30 on shipping. So you're spending $1.35, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
Your cards are $1.50, but free shipping. And the psychology is free shipping feels a lot better than $1.27 in shipping, even
For
though
a
it's
5 cent card.
slightly higher. Yeah, right. I'm like, okay. I see you, Mr. You a smart business person. I like you.
Yeah, so I think it's that, right? And then also there are advantages of using eBay. So I could ship something for 1 ounce. If it's under $20, you could ship it with tracking for 69 cents,
Which
right?
is cheaper than
So
TCG Player
it's
because
cheaper than TCG Player that I'm
yeah,
paying for. And you don't get tracking for TCG Player for that, or you do?
no.
Oh,
Well,
okay. So
you
this,
can pay. So the shipper can pay for it.
got it.
For me, just because costs are so high,
Right.
usually the stamp plus the piece of paper plus the ink plus the mailer, and then you've got to put it in some kind of protector plus a penny sleeve. So a lot of that adds up like really fast
Oh, yeah.
to about the $1.27. So the $1.27 from TCG Player, I don't make like any money at all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
No, that,
everyone's like, "Oh my god, $1.27!" Like, wait a minute, hold on now. Like
yeah,
that
that's what people don't realize, man. Like that
that
stuff
disappears
adds
real
up,
fast.
and
Yeah,
it adds up quick, right?
yeah.
So
I'm
you
not
gotta buy
taking
it
your
across
money.
the board.
I'm either breaking even or I might be losing a penny or two, and that
Right.
can add up over thousands of sales.
So I think also the advantages to so for me, eBay made the most sense. Also because I kind of tested it, right? Like I had a friend's collection I bought for super cheap. And then I was like, all right, if there's like some kind of market here for commons and like uncommons and like low end hollows and reverse hollows, like I'm just gonna like kind of go all in with this, right?
Mhm.
It was kind
Yeah,
of new in terms of like having Card Dealer Pro and stuff. So I was like, I already have the infrastructure set up on my side in terms of like how I, sort my inventory. So like if someone buys it, it's a couple seconds for me to find it, pick, pack, and ship it, right? So like I already had that set up from the sports card angle. I was like, all right, well I could just replicate that for Pokemon, right? So as long
brilliant.
as
Yep.
buyers for it, nothing really changes on my end, you know. Um, it's pretty much business as usual for me. It doesn't matter. It's just like extra people that I could sell to or whatever. Um, so for me, eBay made sense, and also eBay compared to TCG Player, in my opinion, I like seeing all the images of the card I'm actually going to buy, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
TCG Player, it's kind of just a race to the bottom. I feel like of like, all right, what's the cheapest way I could get this card? I don't even look. I don't even see what it is, right? Because there's no images
Yeah.
for that stuff or a low amount of images for that stuff.
Yeah.
You kind of just like almost buy it blind, which I feel like eBay is better for that. I don't think people are necessarily grading these, commons that are like, pennies, but I feel like that just having that added aspect to it as well is like nice from a buyer standpoint.
No, you make a really good point. TCG Player does not, it allows you to upload photos, but most people just use the stock photo associated with the, I call it the card account. So say you
Right.
have a Pikachu, TCG Player has the picture of the Pikachu, the rarity. They've already uploaded all the stats of the card. You just basically click a button saying, I've got 3 of these and I want to
Right.
sell them for 10 cents each,
Right.
and then they do all the work. But I do agree because I can see the scans on your site. I can actually see the card. And again, I just didn't do the math, but the price point is practically the same. It's a nickel a dime difference.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to see the card is a lot nicer because I have bought commons on TCG Player and they show up and it's like these were supposed to be near mint, and like half of them got like nicked edges. Now I paid a nickel, so I'm not going to ask for a refund. I'm not going to mess with it because it's a nickel. I don't
Right.
care that much. But preferably, if it was a near mint purchase, I would like my cards to be near mint.
Yeah, or even like centered, right? Or like somewhat centered.
Oh God, I've had that happen. Yeah, they're near mint, and then you get it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like printed to the right. What the heck? Well, it doesn't matter because I'm using it for a tournament deck or whatever, so it's legal and nobody cares.
Yeah.
But boy, it's ugly as sin. And once this card cycles out of rotation, I am throwing it in the garbage pile.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. I also kind of got into, a little bit. I wanted to get a little bit more into Pokemon anyway.
Yeah.
Always actually wanted to learn, but surprisingly, I never played at the time. And I played all these other TCGs and CCGs and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Having an older brother, my brother missed the Pokemon phase, right? Because he's older. So I never really got into that style of it. But I knew that there's a huge competitive side to it as well. So there's going to be value in even some basic trainer cards as well, right?
Oh, trainers. Yeah, that's where your money's at.
Yeah, so I always really liked that part of it too. Because this Pokemon's crazy. There's a huge collector base that don't even know how to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't even have interest in playing. And then there's obviously the competitive side of it where it's these people don't really care as much necessarily about each particular Pokemon. They just want to play the game and be the best at the game as they can, right? So I always liked finding value in terms of oh, okay, this card's in competitive play. This is a highly sought after card. So if I'm able to get those super cheap, they sell instantly basically in my eBay store.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that where I'll speculate on, a trainer or two from a set, buy as many as I can, and then, they'll just fly off the shelves. And it's great. It's a lot of fun because usually, minus the super high-end Pokemon like the full arts and the secret rares and stuff, trainers are really the most interesting part, I think, as a business person, because usually trainers are fairly universal across decks. So Pokemon are unique. So you'll have a Mew Gardevoir deck, or you'll have, an Inteleon, whatever. You'll have very specific Pokemon. This actually kind of goes back to what you were saying about sports cards. So people would be very interested in a certain team, a certain player, but all the trainers are universal. Every deck uses the same trainer card. So if it draws cards, or it helps you search out a Pokemon, or some cool effect, every single deck generally needs 4 copies of that card.
Right.
So trainers are so universal. If you can find the most popular ones at a good price, you can sell those all day, every day, because it doesn't matter if you're a casual player or a competitive player. You want that trainer because it's good.
Yep, exactly. And sometimes it's as simple as man, this is such a common card. I can't believe I don't have any right now. I got to go to eBay. All right, I'll buy 4 of them. Yeah. Maybe I'll buy 10. Maybe I'll buy 10 of them just in case I need to make another deck and I don't want to have to go out and buy them again. That type of stuff. I've been there many a times for all the other CCGs I play. Some of the standard stuff. Even Magic sometimes. Damn it! I don't have any more swamps. All right. I guess I'll go online and buy 30 swamps or something just in case I need time.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is having more. So generally a play set for Magic and Pokemon is 4. Some card games are 3, some card games are 2, but most play sets are 4 or 3. Having 20 of that card is so nice because if you go to TCG Player, most people have 1 to 4.
Right.
Every once in a while you'll have a shop that's got 300, but they usually price themselves a little bit higher because they know you're going to buy all 4 from them. So yeah, if you've got multiple of a card at $150, that's a steal. That's such a good deal.
Yeah, so I hope so. I mean, I don't try to make a ton of money. I'm not out here trying to gouge stuff for sure, especially Pokemon. And the same thing too is as I'm listing quick, I don't comp stuff when it comes to Pokemon. If it's unless it's a full art or something like that, right? But for the most stuff, I'm buying. I already know I'm getting bulk commons, uncommons, reverse hollows, maybe some and hollow rares, right? So any type of hollow I sell for $1.75. Any kind of common, uncommon, $1.50, and I just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've had some success with it, and it's been so much fun. Honestly, selling it has gotten me way more into the game, and now the game you could play on your phone.
Pocket! I love Pocket.
Oh my! I'm getting addicted to that now, and I'm it's crazy.
It's so much fun, isn't it?
I know. I'm having a really good time with it, so I'm happy that I kind of found my way back into Pokemon. Even I was never huge into Pokemon, but I was of that age when it was big.
Yeah.
all my friends were. The only reason I wasn't was because I was into like other, in my head, like more advanced games, right? At the time, just because I had like older brothers and older cousins, and we were playing like Star Wars, Magic, and whatnot. And then like Pokemon came out, and I was like, this like seems like way easier and like way more kiddish at the time. You know, it felt like less strategic. You know, so I didn't fall in love with it then, but I've had a good time with it now for sure.
That's awesome. I mean, it's good for business too, but yeah, Pokemon, welcome to the family, man. It's fun.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's welcoming too, so it's been awesome.
It is really nice. Okay, well, we're kind of pushing past the hour. I don't want to keep you here too long. So once again, why don't you plug all of your stuff? Tell people who you are, where they can find you, all the stuff. Let them know.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me on eBay, or Discord, or Twitter. Those are my three main ones. At Allset24.
Awesome. And we'll have links in our show notes, and we'll definitely help promote your store and let people know where you're at. But thanks, man. I really appreciate this. We definitely need to have you come on later in the year. We can talk more about how Pokemon's done for you, especially like this first Q1 for Pokemon is insane. Oh, last question. Are you buying current stuff when you can? Like, do you do any like, you know, I don't think rip and ship is the word, but how do I phrase this? Are you buying any of the newer stuff? So like Prismatic Evolutions, Surging Sparks. Yeah. Are you only using Pokemon from like bulk buys you've got? Are you doing any like current range stuff?
It's pretty much from bulk buys, but all that stuff, like a majority of my stuff's from like the Scarlet and Violet era,
Which is good. Yeah. Okay.
So I don't really have much old stuff, or most of it's like ultra modern. I don't do anything sealed, so you're not going to see like, you know, hanging out at Target or Costco or anything.
Gotcha.
But like I'm always like currently like when a new set comes out, for the people that just like to rip, so like I have some relationships with them where they'll take all the good stuff. I'll just take the bulk from them, you know, at like cheap prices that they don't want to deal with.
Yeah. Brilliant.
I have like Surging Sparks. I think is probably the latest one I have in my store now. Is like Surging Commons, Uncommons, and stuff, hollows and rares, but nothing like the full arts or anything. No.
Okay, very cool. All right, well, thanks so much for your time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are here at Kado Games. We will see everybody next time, and always remember to play games and have fun.